What if the person you've almost given up on woke up this morning with a realization they could no longer escape? Not because you chased them, not because you convinced them, but because something deep inside finally refused to stay silent. Today, you'll discover the hidden psychological process that leads someone to finally accept feelings they've resisted for weeks, months, or even years, and why the moment they stop fighting themselves is often the moment everything begins to change. If this message is helping you understand relationships from a deeper psychological perspective, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which insight has resonated with you the most. Your support allows us to continue exploring the hidden patterns of the human mind and the mysteries behind authentic emotional connection. Most people believe feelings appear suddenly, as if love is a switch that turns on overnight. But the truth is often far more complex. Genuine emotions usually begin quietly, growing beneath the surface long before they are acknowledged. A person may convince themselves that what they feel is temporary, irrational, or simply admiration. They bury these emotions beneath routines, responsibilities, and logical explanations. Yet emotions that are repeatedly ignored do not disappear. They continue working in silence, gradually becoming a force that demands attention. The mind naturally seeks stability, so it often resists experiences that threaten its familiar identity. Admitting deep feelings means accepting vulnerability, uncertainty, and the possibility of rejection. Because of this, many people create invisible psychological defenses. They may distance themselves, become inconsistent, or even act colder toward the very person who matters most. These behaviors are not always signs of indifference. Sometimes they reveal an intense internal conflict between what the heart desires and what the conscious mind believes is safe. As this hidden struggle continues, small moments begin to carry unexpected emotional weight. A familiar song, an ordinary conversation, or a quiet morning can awaken emotions that have been suppressed for a long time. What once seemed manageable suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. The person realizes that thoughts of you return without invitation, and your absence creates a silence that no distraction can fully erase. This growing awareness marks the beginning of emotional honesty, even if no words have yet been spoken. The longer someone resists authentic emotions, the stronger those emotions often become. Denial requires constant mental effort, and eventually the mind grows exhausted from maintaining the illusion that nothing significant is happening. When that emotional barrier weakens, everything that was hidden begins to surface at once. Memories gain new meaning, past conversations replay with greater clarity, and feelings that once seemed uncertain suddenly appear undeniable. This is not a magical transformation, but the natural result of prolonged inner conflict finally reaching its limit. The silent inner battle ends, not because someone decides to fall in love, but because they can no longer deny what has already taken root within them. Acceptance is the moment when resistance gives way to truth. It does not guarantee an immediate confession or a dramatic reunion, but it changes the person's inner world completely. Once genuine feelings are consciously recognized, they become difficult to dismiss again. From that point forward, every decision, every interaction, and every moment of silence carries a different emotional meaning, shaped by a truth that has finally been accepted. There are moments in life when the noise of everyday routines suddenly fades, leaving a person alone with thoughts they have avoided for far too long. Morning often becomes one of those moments because the mind is quieter before the demands of the day begin. Without constant distractions, emotions that were pushed aside during busy hours have space to rise into awareness. It is not that feelings are created overnight. Rather, the silence of a new day allows hidden truths to become impossible to ignore. What once felt confusing begins to make sense with surprising clarity. This moment of clarity rarely arrives through a dramatic event. More often, it emerges from countless small experiences that have quietly accumulated over time. A memory that refuses to disappear, a conversation replayed in the mind, or the realization that one person's presence consistently brings comfort and meaning can suddenly connect like pieces of a puzzle. The individual recognizes that these experiences were never random. They formed a pattern, pointing toward an emotional truth that had been waiting patiently beneath the surface all along. At first, the realization can feel unsettling rather than exciting. Accepting deep emotions means accepting change, and change naturally creates uncertainty. Questions begin to appear. Why did I spend so much energy denying this? Why do they matter more than anyone else? What happens if I admit these feelings and everything changes? These questions are not signs of weakness, but evidence that the mind is trying to reconcile its desire for certainty with the reality of genuine emotional attachment. The heart may already know the answer, while the mind struggles to catch up. As this awareness deepens, the person often begins viewing past experiences through an entirely different lens. Moments that once seemed ordinary suddenly carry emotional significance. A shared laugh, a thoughtful message, or even a period of silence reveals a connection that had been overlooked. The mind realizes that what it once dismissed as coincidence may actually have reflected a growing bond. This shift in perception transforms not only how they see the other person, but also how they understand themselves and their emotional needs. The morning of emotional clarity is not a guarantee that someone will immediately confess their feelings or take bold action. Acceptance and expression are two different stages of the same journey. Yet once a person has honestly recognized what they feel, returning to denial becomes increasingly difficult. Their inner world has changed, and every future decision is influenced by that new awareness. Whether they choose to speak, wait, or wrestle with their emotions a little longer, the truth has already taken root, and that quiet morning becomes the turning point they will remember long after the day is past. One of the greatest obstacles to emotional acceptance is not the absence of love, but the presence of fear. Fear has an extraordinary ability to disguise itself as logic, caution, or emotional independence. A person may tell themselves they are simply being realistic, that the timing is wrong, or that they are protecting both people from disappointment. Yet beneath these carefully constructed explanations often lies a much deeper concern, the fear of being vulnerable enough to reveal what truly lives inside the heart. The stronger the feelings become, the stronger this instinct to protect oneself can also become. Fear creates an invisible conflict between desire and self-preservation. Part of the person longs to move closer, to express affection, and to build a meaningful connection. Another part warns that opening the heart could lead to rejection, misunderstanding, or irreversible change. This internal struggle can produce confusing behavior. Someone may become distant after moments of closeness, hesitate before replying to messages, or appear emotionally inconsistent. These actions are not always signs that feelings are fading. Sometimes they reveal a mind desperately trying to control emotions that already feel larger than its ability to manage them. As this struggle continues, the individual begins to experience emotional exhaustion. Pretending not to care requires constant effort because the truth continues to surface in unexpected ways. Thoughts return during quiet moments, memories become increasingly vivid, and the emotional presence of the other person refuses to disappear. The more they attempt to suppress these experiences, the more noticeable they become. It is like trying not to think about a single word. The very act of resisting keeps bringing it back into awareness. Gradually, fear begins to lose its power, because maintaining denial becomes more difficult than facing reality.
There comes a point when the cost of emotional avoidance becomes greater than the risk of honesty. The person starts recognizing that fear has not protected them from pain. Instead, it has prolonged uncertainty and prevented genuine connection. They realize that avoiding vulnerability has also meant avoiding the possibility of something deeply meaningful. This realization does not erase fear overnight, but it changes its role. Fear is no longer the unquestioned guide controlling every decision. Instead, it becomes one voice among many, no longer powerful enough to silence the truth that has been growing within. When the shadow of fear finally begins to fade, acceptance follows naturally. The person understands that courage is not the absence of anxiety, but the willingness to acknowledge authentic emotions despite uncertainty. They may still hesitate before speaking, and they may still wonder what the future holds, but they are no longer fighting themselves. The battle shifts from denying their feelings to deciding how and when to express them. That quiet inner surrender marks the beginning of genuine emotional freedom, where honesty replaces resistance and the heart is finally allowed to speak in its own voice. Not every connection leaves a lasting impression, yet some people remain present in our inner world long after the conversation has ended or the distance between us has grown. There is something about authentic emotional connection that refuses to fade simply because circumstances change. It is not sustained by constant communication or dramatic gestures, but by the quiet recognition that another person has touched something meaningful within us. Even when the conscious mind tries to move on, the deeper layers of the psyche continue returning to the same emotional presence, searching for understanding and completion. Authentic connection often reveals itself through consistency rather than intensity. A person may meet many individuals throughout life, yet only one continues to appear in quiet moments of reflection, without effort or intention. Memories connected to that individual carry unusual emotional weight. Ordinary experiences suddenly remind them of shared conversations, familiar expressions, or moments that once seemed insignificant. These recurring thoughts are not necessarily signs of obsession. They often indicate that the relationship has become deeply woven into the person's emotional landscape. The bond exists beneath conscious choice, influencing thoughts in subtle but persistent ways. The mind frequently attempts to explain this invisible pull through logic alone. It may insist that the feelings are temporary, that distance should weaken the connection, or that time should erase emotional attachment. Yet genuine connection rarely follows such predictable rules. Human emotions are shaped not only by conscious decisions, but also by experiences that resonate with our deepest values, hopes, and unspoken desires. When another person reflects qualities that feel profoundly meaningful, the connection continues to grow internally, even during periods of silence. The absence of contact does not automatically dissolve what has already taken root within the heart. As this realization becomes stronger, the person begins to understand that they have been resisting more than another individual. They have been resisting an important truth about themselves. The attraction is no longer viewed as a passing emotion, but as evidence of personal transformation. The relationship has become a mirror, revealing hidden longings, unresolved fears, and the desire for genuine emotional closeness. Instead of asking why this person keeps returning to their thoughts, they begin asking what this connection is teaching them about who they are becoming. This shift marks the beginning of deeper self-awareness alongside emotional acceptance. The magnetic pull of authentic connection does not force two people together, nor does it guarantee a particular outcome. What it does guarantee is that genuine feelings cannot be permanently silenced by denial or distance alone. Once someone recognizes the depth of that bond, every interaction carries new significance because it is no longer filtered through resistance. Whether they eventually choose to speak their heart or quietly continue their journey, they can no longer pretend the connection is meaningless. The invisible force that kept drawing them back has finally revealed itself, not as fantasy, but as a reflection of an emotional truth they are now prepared to face.
Long before someone speaks the words they have been holding inside, a profound transformation usually takes place within them. A confession is rarely the beginning of love. It is often the final stage of a long internal journey. For weeks, months, or even years, emotions may remain hidden beneath hesitation, uncertainty, and self-protection. During this period, the person is not only learning about their feelings for someone else, they are also confronting parts of themselves they have avoided for a long time. Every silent thought, every unanswered question, and every moment of reflection slowly reshapes their understanding of what truly matters. This transformation often begins when the old ways of thinking stop providing comfort. The excuses that once justified emotional distance lose their strength. They realize that staying silent has not brought peace, nor has pretending to feel nothing erased the connection. Instead, the emotional tension continues to grow. The mind starts recognizing that avoiding vulnerability is not the same as achieving freedom. What once felt like protection now feels like a barrier preventing genuine happiness. This shift is subtle, but it changes the direction of every thought that follows. As the inner change deepens, the person begins viewing themselves differently. They become more honest about their fears, more aware of their emotional needs, and more willing to question the beliefs that kept them emotionally guarded. They may notice that they think about you with greater warmth, replay shared memories with new appreciation, or imagine conversations they once tried to avoid. These are not merely romantic fantasies, they are signs that the heart is becoming stronger than the defenses that once controlled it. The desire for authenticity gradually outweighs the desire for emotional safety. At this stage, the possibility of confession becomes less about seeking a perfect outcome and more about living truthfully. The individual understands that remaining silent carries its own consequences. Even if uncertainty remains, they begin realizing that expressing genuine emotions is healthier than endlessly suppressing them. This does not mean they suddenly become fearless. Doubts may still exist, and questions about the future may remain unanswered. Yet their focus shifts from avoiding rejection to honoring what they genuinely feel. That change alone represents a remarkable psychological transformation. When the moment of confession finally arrives, it is not simply a sentence spoken aloud. It is the visible expression of an invisible journey that has been unfolding for a long time. Every fear they faced, every defense they lowered, and every emotional truth they accepted has prepared them for that single moment of honesty. Whether the conversation leads to a new beginning or simply provides emotional closure, the transformation has already occurred. They are no longer the person who hid behind denial. They have become someone willing to let authenticity guide their actions, knowing that living with truth is ultimately more liberating than living behind fear. When someone finally accepts their feelings for you, it is natural to imagine that everything is about to change overnight. Yet emotional acceptance and outward action are not always the same. A person may reach complete clarity within themselves, while still needing time to decide what to do next. Acceptance is an internal turning point, not necessarily an immediate declaration. Understanding this difference helps prevent unrealistic expectations and reminds us that genuine emotional growth often unfolds gradually rather than through dramatic moments.
What changes first is not the relationship itself, but the way they perceive you.
Once they stop denying what they feel, your presence begins carrying a different emotional significance. Conversations that once seemed ordinary become more meaningful. Your absence becomes more noticeable, and your words linger in their thoughts long after they have been spoken. They may become more attentive, more reflective, or more aware of how their choices affect the connection. Even if these changes remain subtle, they often reveal that something important has shifted within their inner world.
At the same time, this moment invites you to examine your own emotional landscape. It is easy to focus entirely on what the other person feels, but every meaningful relationship involves two evolving individuals. Ask yourself whether you are prepared for deeper honesty, greater vulnerability, and the responsibilities that come with authentic connection. Emotional acceptance on one side creates an opportunity, but the future of the relationship depends on the willingness of both people to communicate openly and respond with maturity. A lasting bond is built through mutual understanding rather than assumptions. It is also important to recognize that acceptance does not guarantee a particular outcome. Life is shaped by timing, circumstances, personal growth, and individual choices. Someone may genuinely care for you and still need time to overcome fear, heal from past experiences, or gather the courage to express themselves. Likewise, they may choose to communicate their feelings in ways that are quiet and gradual rather than dramatic. Patience becomes valuable because genuine emotions often reveal themselves through consistent actions rather than a single emotional moment. Ultimately, what their acceptance means for you is not that your future has already been written, but that a new chapter